Growing up, sharks were never a big part of my life. You know, we've all seen Jaws, but that's about where it ended for me. However, in 2006, I met Eli Martinez, the editor of Shark Diver magazine, and he invited me on a summer-long shark diving trip. I was excited to see a bunch of beautiful places that I'd never been, and to actually see sharks in the wild.
I love filming sharks, I love diving with sharks, I love interacting with sharks, because everything means something in the shark world. But when you've fished these animals to the point of extinction, you know, there's got to be a time where you just got to say, hey, you got to stop.
Being new to the shark world, no matter where we went, there was always somebody there trying to teach me about conservation. They said that the sharks were being overfished, that their numbers were dwindling, and that if something wasn't done immediately, we would have no sharks left.
Currently, they estimate about 400 species of sharks out there, and a number of those are considered to be globally vulnerable to extinction. You know, their numbers are really dwindling. I think some estimates are saying that just in North American sharks, the numbers have dropped about 90%. And it's tough for those animals to really bounce back from overexploitation, because, you know, top predators have a way of kind of self-regulating their populations. They have a very low reproductive rate. So while fish may have thousands or millions of eggs that they spawn, you know, some shark species may have 2 pups every other year. And it may take some species 20 years to reach maturity. So it's very difficult for their numbers to really bounce back once they're taken down so low.
Then I met Captain Bill Goldschmidt, a retired shark fisherman, who had a completely different idea on shark conservation.
You know, they're saying that 90% of the sharks are caught and captured and they're dead and decimated, but yet the few commercial fishermen that are still allowed to go out there for the few permits that you gotta basically get on your knees to get, those guys go out and they still get their quotas, and they get them in a matter of days. You know, what I'm saying is there's got to be checks and balances, but they don't get it. Basically, they want to protect everything. The Japanese have been fishing for sharks. The Indians have been fishing for sharks for 100 years. And they're still catching the same amount of sharks today as they were 100 years ago. So the environmentalists claim it's not holding water. If they were fishing out, why haven't they fished out?
After talking to Captain Bill, certain questions were raised. I wondered if sharks really were endangered, or if overfishing was just a myth.
I started Shark Diver magazine in 2003. I had always toyed with the idea of magazines. I just something in my head that I've always wanted to create. I've always loved magazines. I think, you know, for every sport that I've been into, for every activity, there was always a magazine dedicated to that sport. And when I got to shark diving and when I fell in love with the sport, there was nothing out there. You know, threw all my cards in a hat, and I said, why not? Let me go ahead and play with this and see what happens. I had no idea what I was doing, but I thought I'd give it a shot, and been having fun with it ever since.
We took off for Galveston, Texas, and we were going to meet up with Eli's friend Andy Murch, who is a shark photographer.
I started shark diving a long time ago, long before I got into photography or anything like that. So I guess people do things in different orders. And for me, it was really falling in love with the ocean and wanting to explore it as best I can. And when I stumbled upon sharks, my first shark, I was so excited. And then as I became a photographer, it became the perfect marriage of having this job where I could go and photograph the things that I love to see.
First shark of the trip is always it's almost the most difficult one to wait for. You know, I mean, everything else is just building on a success that you've already had, but it's getting that first shark, because if it doesn't come, you're getting skunked, and that's just something you sit in fear of the whole time. But we're pretty confident we're going to get sharks today.
This is going to be the first time that I've actually seen people in person go out to jump in the water with sharks. I mean, they literally go out to where they're going, chum up the water, don't do anything until like the first dorsal breaks the water, and then as soon as they think it's time to get in, they jump in, and it was actually a pretty insane experience to see these people do that.
To have a successful shark dive, we need to chum. Chumming is fish blood, bits and pieces of the fish, fish carcasses, whatever, you know, anything that's oily or bloody. That's what we use to attract the sharks.
I mean, if you're going to jump in the water and for the first time on your own, you've never seen a shark before and you really know nothing about it, and you've decided to just go out to the sea and start chumming, I would say don't go. But if you're going with an organised shark tour and they've done it all before, the most important thing is to listen to what the experts say. If these people have done it repetitively and safely, then you're probably in good hands.
At first, when they jumped in the water, I thought, these guys must be insane. Like, they must be crazy. You know, because who in their right mind jumps in the water when sharks show up? But it's funny to see because, you know, you get to know them, and they really are just regular guys, and this really is just their job and what they love to do.
What I'm hoping is going to make a difference is, you know, telling the shark story, showing people interacting with sharks, and, you know, because people are going to save what they love, period. And that's what I'm hoping to do. That's what I'm hoping to do with my magazine, with our stories, with our films, you know, with our photos, is to show people these animals in a different light, you know, that they're not these mindless monsters, that, you know, there is an intelligent animal down there, and it's pretty exciting and beautiful, and you know, maybe it's going to be an animal that some kid out there wants to go diving with.
And I believe that in the shark diving world, anyone who decides they're going to jump in the water with big tiger sharks, big bull sharks, and other apex predators should at least understand the risks. I think it should be explained to them. I'm sure they do understand the risks, and they're prepared to take them.
First of all, I'm going to tell you flat out now, if you want to know the real truth about the shark diving, that's bullshit. Excuse me, I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. The shark diving, they actually create more of a danger for the public, and I wouldn't participate in that. Yeah, I had my own cages, and I took thrill seekers and professional photographers down in the cage to photograph the sharks, but I killed them. I killed the sharks. After these guys took their pictures, I killed the sharks.
Well, sharks certainly can be conditioned. There's no shortage of scientific studies that have proven that. To quote Bob Dylan, you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. And if you go on one of these cruises and you see how those sharks appear instantly when a boat comes in an area, you know darn well they're conditioned. They're used to being fed, and they arrive on cue.
Shark diving has always been somewhat of a controversial topic. And I always wondered actually why that was. I think the people that are against it are the people that don't understand sharks. And we fear what we don't understand is not always the case. So it has been very controversial. So skydiving, you know, and people die in skydiving, but they make a calculated choice that they're going to go experience this, and all skydivers I talk to are better for the experience. Well, that's how I feel about shark diving.
You know, we really don't know the answer to that, yes or no, you know, in terms of, you know, hand feeding a shark, whether it changes their behavior or not and makes them a person more susceptible to being attacked later down by that particular animal. I mean, when shark attacks do occur, the shark is making a mistake. It's confusing its natural prey with a human in the water.
Sir. Sharking.
Right there, baby. Woo-hoo! Welcome to Holbox Island.
That's a slow-moving shark. That's perfect. That's exactly what we need for this shark.
Shark diving as a whole is a very interesting way to promote shark conservation. People getting in the water with these animals probably goes a long way for helping to promote the tourism aspect and to get word out on the street that, you know, these animals are important and that they are an integral part of the ecosystem.
There's another very strong reason to do and encourage shark diving. It not only impacts a local economy somewhere in the world in a positive way by bringing in tourists to dive at a facility, but they eat at restaurants, they stay at hotels, they take taxi cabs, they shop in the shops. It's a very, very trickle-down economic solution for many, many third world countries. Holbox in Mexico, a little sleepy fishing village, their whole economic infrastructure has been turned around by the influx of whale sharks on a regular annual basis. It's totally impacted that local community in a positive way. By protecting that shark, then, rather than killing him and selling his fins for a few dollars once, you now have a replenishing resource forever.
Ecotourism could be good, but as long as it's not presented as an alternative to hunting or to other type of sustainable use activities, and as long as it does not conflict with the natural habitat of the animals which are subject to ecotourism, and that applies to sharks as well. What's happening then? You're taking the tradition out of fishermen, out of hunters or whalers and so on. You're saying, now, what you're doing is wrong. You're destroying nature. Now, why don't you change your attitude and become someone, a tourist guide, if you want? And this is something that we strongly object to, unless, of course, you have scientific reason to do it. If we do watching of anything that we've been eating in the past, in the next 10 to 15 years, what are we going to eat?
By the end of the whale shark dive, Eli and Andy were pumped. We had seen sharks in every location we'd gone, and they were just on cloud 9. But it wasn't soon after that all that changed.
So here we are protecting the whale sharks, and we've got these boats coming in with big tiger sharks and big bull sharks. So it's complete inequality here. They have no idea about conservation. All they want to do is get the tourist dollars in for the whale sharks. There's a few people here who really care, but it's this kind of bullshit that is totally screwing up the oceans. And there's no sharks for us to see. There's no sharks to create a balance in the water. Yeah, you want to see them weigh the shark? Let's see how big it really is.
We got on an anchor line. I was anchored on the sandbar. The dog all of a sudden started barking. And next thing you know, he jumps in the water. I saw why he jumped in the water. 60 feet off the bow, this 11-foot great hammerhead started cruising, and my dog had jumped in the water between her, us, and the shark. Well, I couldn't yell shark. I mean, if I yelled shark, she would have freaked out. So I told her, Susan, I grabbed her by the arm and I pulled her on board. Well, as soon as I pulled her on board, she started yelling at me for grabbing her hair, but then she looked and she saw the shark turn off the bow, and I called to Lucky to come back, and what a name. He wasn't so lucky. I called him to come back to me, and as he turned, the hammerhead went under, came up, and hit him just like that in the groin, and I mean, blood in the water, and the dog being pulled down, and when you're like, you're 17 years old, it sucks. Yeah, it's like you're, shit, then he just killed my dog. And then all of a sudden you start thinking, wow, this is not like in comic books. It's not like, it's real. It's real. And she freaked out. And of course, I grabbed a gaff, snagged my dog, pulled him on deck. When I pulled him on deck, his lower half was bitten off. And I pulled the kicker and got us to shore. She collapsed on the beach, and I proceeded to break both of my oars and gaff on the engine, and from that point on, I kill sharks.
Well, I think I was in shock when I first saw the tiger shark in the back of the truck, but that immediately turned to, I guess you would say it was just a feeling of irony to think that we were there on this shark diving island where they're promoting whale shark diving as and themselves as this great island full of conservation and people that are forward thinking, and then kind of behind the curtains there's all these other species of sharks that they're pulling out of the water and killing because it's just another way that they can get money. How about actually practicing what you preach, and if you're going to protect sharks, then protect sharks.
See, that's what happens when you get a shark that's so big, you can't even freaking lift it. These guys are considered local heroes for catching this shark, but what the rest of us know is that they're actually public enemy number one now, because what they do is going to affect this island in the future, as well as the rest of the planet.
Those guys, living
A lot of studies are indicating that absolutely their numbers are being decimated. It's estimated that I think North American shark populations have dropped about 90%. There are, over 100 million sharks killed every year. Those are big numbers.
Hey, mister, how much is 100 million?
Why do you ask, Billy?
'Cause the TV said 100 million sharks are killed every year.
Well, let's think about that for a second. 100 million a year is 8,333,333 sharks a month. 1,923,076 a week. 273,972 sharks a day. 11,375 sharks an hour, 190 sharks a minute, and 3 a second.
Gee, that's a lot, mister.
You're damn right, Billy.
100 million sharks that's been bandied about now for probably 10 years at least, was the result of a back-of-the-envelope conversation between a couple of scientists at a meeting.
I don't really know if the number is 100 million, 150 million, but I think we're still very conservative about what we say. I think the number is even higher. Can we prove it? No. Will we ever be able to prove it? No, because the animals will be gone by then.
I remember asking the question to someone at one of the shark workshop I've been attending, and the answer said, well, we can count the number of fins that are being traded, and as we don't know everything, we multiply by a certain numbers, by 10 or 20, we know maybe 10%, so we multiply by another 10, some absolutely, again, unscientific approach to data.
The 100 million. I have no idea where the 100 million came from.
Are you familiar with?
No, I've not heard the 100 million before. I don't know where that number came from.
Remember, the 100 million is originally given wasn't just for sharks, but it was also for skeets and rays. Although we often have seen in the press that it was all sharks.
They claim 100 million sharks are destroyed every year. Why not claim 200, 300, 400? Because they can't prove any of it. So they say what they want. They say what they want, and it's all lies.
You know, when it comes to figures like 100 million sharks every year being slaughtered, I think government officials like NOAA and so on will have to be very careful with those figures. I'd be very surprised if they kind of support, even vaguely, these kind of figures, because they are garbage. They are rubbish science.
Well, it's amazing how a number can be taken and grabbed without any scientific credibility whatsoever. So I really can't comment on 100 million because I have no idea how it was derived or where it came from.
I was surprised to hear that almost everyone I spoke to didn't necessarily agree with the 100 million sharks, and some of them didn't even recognize it. But those that did support the 100 million sharks definitely blamed the Asian fin market for the problem.
A huge number of that 100 million is because of shark finning. And shark finning is a big problem out there. There's no arguing that it's being done.
The fins never skyrocketed in value until 1991. And then once it started doing that doubling, tripling, you got to figure we were at $3 and $4 and $6 a pound, and then $9 and $10 and $11 a pound, and then they're at $30 a pound, wet. When they're dry like this, 80 to 100. And yet you still have to dress it all down. The longer the noodle, the more valuable it was. You have the high sea fleets, Taiwanese, the Spanish, the Chinese, the Russians, Japanese. That same clip that they keep showing of that blue shark, live, finned, pitched it overboard. Vessel was like 200-foot vessel or something like that, out in the Pacific or wherever it was. It wasn't our guys. It's been illegal to fin in this country since 1993.
Everyone will disagree with the way we find atrocious the shark finning of live sharks. I mean, you don't do this to a live animal. I mean, that's as simple as that.
Because the meat market had been collapsed by the media. And then they started finning, which was not illegal. But keep in mind, finning is you remove the fin and you throw the remainder overboard. Removing the fin and dressing the carcass is a horse of another color. People misinform people for the longest time, telling them it was aphrodisiac. It is not. It's a vitality enhancer.
That's why the long noodle, that old man, see that long noodle? It doesn't matter if it's a shark fin noodle or a noodle made out of, some kind of dough. It's symbolic. They don't cut their noodles. They keep their noodle long life.
I hate to be, in fact, a witness of this kind of argument that is being spread by the media and has been making its way through the people and saying, well, this is atrocious. And then again, what the link is made with this 100 million shark kills every year for what? Fin soup, shark fin soup. Then it turns into a racist type of approach. People say, what those stupid Chinese are doing. They're ruining the population of sharks and so on. And they're creating unbalance in the ocean.
It's a status symbol. It's not the soup itself isn't anything special. I've had it. It's the thought that it's a special item. It's the caviar of a ceremony. Frankly, what has to happen is we have to stop the cultural tradition that demands shark fin soup, and it's a hard thing to do. It's the shark fin soup is served in Asian weddings as a traditional food. It's as much a tradition there as having a wedding cake here. And imagine if somebody from China came in and said, from now on you can't have any wedding cakes. Not only we would be offended somebody telling us that, but we would likely say, no, that's what we want to do. It's our right. Well, going into China and asking them to change a cultural tradition that makes our measly 200 or 300 years worth of wedding cake in the United States pale in comparison, and there are thousands of years of civilization doing these kinds of things, is a hard nut to crack. But nevertheless, still ought to be tried.
With no proven culprit for the shark crisis, no factual evidence of how many sharks are killed every year, or exactly how they are killed, I had an opportunity to go out with some of the Mexican longliners, and I figured I would go out with them to get some answers firsthand.
¿Tienes, Martín? Yo a ti te está garroteando bola. Ahora sí, agárralo por acá. Ahí te va. Ajá.
Derecha, derecha. Abajo. Ahí te viene solito. Moviendo.
When I was on the boat, I was expecting to see the finning of live sharks. The media would have you believe that any area in the world that does not have some kind of regulation for fishing, especially with sharks, you're going to see finning, because that is a very easy way to make a lot of money. But that is not what happened there. They brought the whole shark aboard and they transported it all the way to shore and then sold the shark as a whole. And I guess no matter what the media likes to say or present, that at least is not true in Holbox.
There they go. Two beautiful bull sharks, two beautiful tigers. None of them are ever going to reach maturity to breed, so there won't be another generation of these little guys. Grim.
All it is now is entertainment for the tourists and the locals. It's going to be fins for the Asian market and meat for consumption. Anything that's left will be turned into fertilizer. Pretty sad.
I mean, you got to kill them some way. You know, I guess the Mexicans, they probably figure it's more economical to whack them with a bat than to use a double-aught buckshot or 12 gauge. You know, an animal's got to be killed. I mean, when they slaughter steers, when they cut off the heads of chickens, something. I think these people are hypocritical. The ones that are whining about this and they're squeamish, but yet they sit down to dinner with a T-bone steak or their prawns wrapped in bacon. You know, what the fuck?
To watch the sharks get brutally killed or to watch them get beat to death the way the fishermen do, I mean, come on. I mean, I understand that, you know, you got to get it on the boat, but, you know, that is, I mean, if we were to do that to cows, if you were to take a bat and just, you know, hit a cow, you know, 40, 50 times in the head to try to kill it, you know, people would be outraged, you know. I mean, I think that, you know, because it's a fish, or, you know, the way people feel about fish or insects is the fact that they don't look like they show any emotion. So, you know, we're really desensitized to thinking that they feel any pain, you know, but because it's a shark, no one really cares.
This is the fishing village, the historical fishing village of Cortez. And if you've come in here, there's 2 remaining out of 7. There's 2 remaining viable fishing operations. You got Cortez Bait and Seafood and AP Bell's just down the canal here. Everything else has been put out of business. The net ban, the crabbers regulations, long lining for grouper, pissing in the toilet. Basically, they regulate everything now.
Yeah, it's totally transformed. They spend more money on managing all of these fisheries than the fisheries are actually valued at. What Confucius say, the more rules you make, the more criminals you make. So when you got a big book full of rules, and it's real hard for fishermen to keep up with it all. And that's where I come in, supposedly. But I haven't earned a dime from shark in 3 years.
They are winning. I was put out of business. The bottom line is they regulate. I had some pimply punk coming to the fishing meetings and telling us that they were going to put these laws into order. We can't catch this species. We can't catch that species. We can only use this many hooks. We can only catch this quota. I mean, they got to a point where I couldn't make enough money to pay for my gas and feed my kids. So they put me out of business. So yeah, they are winning.
And part of what they've done is destroyed my family, my friends, and family and friends of other folks out there by using fatally flawed science.
Part of the development and eventual crash of the fishery was the result of some poor thought processes of scientists trying to develop another fishery, and then part of it was just the natural development in a capitalist society of trying to go out and catch as much as you possibly can.
I'm so thrilled that you guys would take the time to come on back here and come here and film, because, buddy, you never get this out of your blood. This is in your blood. I was raised on this, you know? I'm 60 years old almost now, and there's a lot of fishermen here. This is all they know.
They're shutting shark diving down. They shut it down in Florida. They shut it down in the Cayman Islands. Now they're shutting it down in Hawaii, and it's all based on bad science.
The reasoning behind it, and it actually isn't proven or disproven right now. There are some parties that feel that it attracts sharks closer to the beach and makes them more. It makes humans more susceptible to coming encounters with them because you're bringing the animals closer into shore, and some feel that it's changed their behavior, although there's no real scientific evidence that suggests that shark feeding changes their behavior one way or another. So we really don't have any opinion one way or the other on how the shark feeding affects these animals.
In theory, one might think that this is an ecologically fine thing because those animals are not being killed for their fins or for their flesh, and therefore it's a non-intrusive situation. But the reality is those animals are now part of an underwater circus. They've been trained, they're trained animals. You might as well be in a circus ring, only underwater. And these animals swim circles around the bait and perform, if you will. Their levels of abundance, of course, are much, much higher than they would be in the natural world. And so it begs the question, where did they come from, and what's the area they came from look like now?
A lot of people that don't like shark diving, of course, they come up with funny ideas. You know, when you aggregate some sharks here, you know, then all of a sudden you change the entire ecosystem. Well, I would agree to that if the shark would be a stupid animal. But sharks are really intelligent animals. They come and go. And considering how little the amount we give them on a daily basis, that would never ever be the diet. So it's a really huge stress to say, well, if we bring in more sharks, you know, we change everything. No, it's not the case.
You've got shark fishermen on one side that used to put food on their table and the public's table, and then you've got shark divers who are trying to save sharks by showing people what they think, you know, sharks really are like, and that they're not mindless man-eaters. And now you've got them joined at the hip, both being shut down, all in the name of saving the shark. The next leg of our adventure was Venice, Louisiana. We were going to meet up with this guy, Captain Al Walker, who said that he could put us on large sharks in great numbers. Through the whole trip, especially after Holbox, you know, you continue to hear how sharks are overfished and you're not going to see any. So I was wondering if maybe this was just a way for him to make money and say, well, you know, it's the ocean and you find them or you don't find them, so be it. So Eli seemed pretty pumped, and I could understand his excitement, but I was skeptical. This whole time we've been told that sharks are overfished and that seeing them in large numbers was a thing of the past. So we're on the boat, and we've been chumming for 30 minutes, maybe an hour tops, before the first shark broke the water and the guys got in because we had sharks. Well, when they got in there, we've realized that there were about 30 or 40 dusky sharks. Dusky sharks are supposed to be rare, and one of the reports I read said that they are extinct in the Gulf of Mexico. There should be none, and we had 40 of them. And some of them were really old and wrinkled, and I mean, like, these sharks, they weren't pups. It just made me wonder, like, at what point do we start questioning what we're being told by everybody? By the media, by the researchers, by the conservationists?
Well, it would depend on what sharks you're speaking of. In some cases, some shark populations have suffered severe declines. An example that I can give to you is a species that's found in the Northwest Atlantic Ocean and Gulf of Mexico, the dusky shark. We have documented declines, 80% declines for this particular species.
The dusky, they had put it and 13 other sharks on the prohibited species expansion in '99 without any science. None. No assessment, no, just a wish list, and they got it through.
Well, the Protect Now is what the National Marine Fisheries Service policy is. We have a precautionary approach to fisheries management. What that means is that, given everything, we adopt a precautionary approach to ensure that the population is being harvested sustainably. We have many species which are included on our prohibited species list, that is no commercial or recreational take. And many of these were put on this prohibited species list because we didn't have very good biological information on them. The evidence that we had from similar species or from the same species in other parts of the world suggested that they might have low productivity and their numbers not be as high. Because of that, we adopted the precautionary approach and made them prohibited until a time comes when we can actually assess them.
We have a big problem, of course, with shark protection, shark conservation. When you go to the IUCN, to the red list, we just list these animals who are close to being endangered. And very often we have sharks that no one really knows anything, so hence we cannot say, oh, they're still abundant or not. And my position is, if you don't know anything about a particular animal, protect it. And if 10 years down the road you say, well, we didn't really have to protect it, then okay, take them off the list. But if we wait till we sometimes get some measly data down the road in 10 years and say, gee whiz, 10 years ago we should have done something, and it's too late. So protect first and collect later is definitely the better approach than the other way around.
What we're pushing for is actually to put more species, on that list, like the lemon shark, for example, and other sharks as well.
We are very happy to say, hey, listen, we're gonna put the sharks on CITES appendices. They become what I call listocrat. Not only they are bureaucrat, but they are listocrat. People for whom anything that moves with 4 legs, swim or flies and so on, needs to be on a protected list. And once you get on a protected list, then you can move on to the next species. But it's not the end of the problem, that's the beginning of it.
Those 19 sharks that they have on the prohibited species list, all 19 need to be assessed. The remaining sharks that are legal to catch, all of them, all 20 of them, there's 39 species that's been involved since '93 in this whole plan, need to be independently reviewed after they're individually assessed. And then you're going to hear them say, we can't assess them all. We don't have the data. Go get it. Find a way to get it. Finance it. But then funding priorities. Back to the politicians and the lawyers. They're not in a hurry to take some money from over here for buying a research vessel to go out and measure temperatures at 3,000 foot of water, as opposed to go out and get a little slimy and catch a shark. They're just not going to do it. And so the guys, they only go on like one survey a year for a couple of weeks for shark sampling, and the worst month there is August. And this is the type of stuff that if you can't fix the science and you can't control these people with advocacy agendas that are busy posing as scientists, the system's broke.
Alright, I live on this planet, and I'm not looking to destroy any one resource or are completely depleted. And I understand where the precautionary approach is coming from. They don't have enough research. They don't know exactly what it is that they're doing. And to avoid some kind of catastrophe, they just shut down everything. Understandable. But, you know, after doing all the research we've done and contacting as many people as we've tried to, though half of them won't even respond back to you, get their emails saying, hey, join our conservation group, hey, donate money to this group, hey, whatever, save the sharks and give us $5, give us $50, whatever. With such little research and what seems to be little funds because sharks are not high on the priority list, where is all this money going?
Where's the money come from? The Pew Charitable Trust out of Philadelphia is the biggest gorilla in the fight right now. And that's the Sun Oil Corporation, Sunoco. And that's the heirs to that. And they have been putting all this money into Audubon, World Wildlife Fund, Ocean Conservancy, Oceana, just the list goes on. And so they've now got Jane Lubchenco, who was a fellow in that stuff, now as the head of NOAA. They've got their people all inside and around through the government, and they're going to get ready to play that bigger international picture, use the State Department, the whole 9 yards.
There you have Wild 8 or attacking a region of the world where they, you know, for food consumptions, for its trade pattern and so on, as being destructive of the marine environment. And people will be sympathetic to that. Oh my gosh, you know. And for them, it makes them look good. They're really attacking China and Japan and so on. And so give us some money so that we can stop that from happening in Asia. And that's really part of the fundraising pattern that you have.
But I understand that under the latest economy and the shift of administrations and things, that some of these scientists are not getting the money that they want for their studies and whatever else. And then they'll point to that as another problem.
I spoke to the researchers who relayed to me that, you know, it's very difficult to get funding, and rarely do they ever get it from NGOs. So it seems actually that the NGOs really are using their money to help sustain the crisis. I've tried to contact them, I've emailed and called, but I have never gotten a response. The end of our trip was the Bahamas, which is one of the best places you can go shark diving. They have really groomed this area so that you can get a lot of different species of sharks in one spot.
It's all tied together with conservation. You have to make conservation a business.
This is the way extremism is being built into conservation. What you need to have is to have a charismatic species. And thanks to organizations like the International Shark Attack File, they've been able to produce the shark as being a charismatic species. Once you have the charismatic species, you need to create a crisis, a drama. And you need the third element, you need to have a villain responsible for this crisis and drama. Then you have the perfect recipe for good fundraising.
Protecting sharks is almost a hopeless cause, I'm sad to say, and I think that my part of it is very, very small. Having said that, I do think that my role is critical, the same as everybody else's is. I think the more publicity that we can give to these animals, the better it is.
The problem that we have right now with sharks is there are too many groups who want a share of the sharks. Some of them, well, the fishery people, they just want to get sharks to sell on the market. Shark divers, they want to have the sharks because, you know, they make a good living showing people sharks. And then you have the shark scientists who don't really, well, a majority of them don't really care about the animal in the ocean, just want to do their research. So it would be an easy step. You think that everybody should sit down and let's see how we can all get our share without jeopardizing the survival of these animals. And this just does not happen. What we need is a common middle ground, that we don't jeopardize the sharks' populations, but we don't destroy someone's livelihood. I personally believe it could be done, but what we would need is get rid of our egos and really listen to the other person's opinion.
Well, no matter where you are, there's always finger pointing. You know, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. Now, that being said, you know, as I mentioned earlier, our stock assessment process involves all the parties. We invite industry. We invite conservation groups. We bring in scientists not just from National Marine Fisheries Service, but also from academia, other research institutes, and we all try to work together to come up with the best science that we have, the best assessment, and then consequently the best strategy for handling these animals. So we've already seen some of it by individuals working together to come up with a common goal. Well, I mean that's the case. I don't think you're going to make everybody happy no matter what you do, but you try to find common ground among all parties.
You can't make everybody happy all the time. They won't let you. And so the reality is that the science is the only way out because of the way congressional law has been mandated. But Congress failed us there. They never made a minimum threshold of the soundness of the science.
The bottom line is I think you said it well when I asked you yesterday, talk to your friends, and you said, no, I just want to put the facts out there and let them make their own choice. That's the truth, that's the key.
The conservation groups are making a lot of money through fundraising to help save sharks, and very little of that money makes it to the shark researchers who have a hard time getting grants in the first place. And with what little research they do have, they go out and make really big decisions on how to manage and regulate sharks. This is what shut down shark fishing and is shutting down shark diving. What's left are the advocates who are saying whatever they please to fulfill whatever agenda they may have. And, you know, through every place I've been and everyone I've spoke to, you know, I've asked, I mean, are sharks overfished? And it just depends on who you ask.